Coming up on today's episode of Locally Florida, we are sitting down with Rick A. Clark, the new superintendent for Gulf Islands National Seashore, to learn about his latest on the Fort Pickens Ferry system, your gateway to our beautiful coastline. Plus, Duel Christian returns to the show to give us a sneak peek at his highly anticipated cookbook, The Flavors of Pensacola, a culinary history book with recipes. It's sure to inspire both seasoned cooks and food lovers. All of that and more coming up on Locally Florida, which starts right now. Hey, and welcome back to Locally Florida, your go-to guide for all the things happening around our beautiful Sunshine State. I'm Tori Glass, and today we've got an exciting show lined up. First, we're going to be joined by Richard A. Clark, the new superintendent for the Gulf Islands National Seashore. We'll get to know Rick a little better, dive into his career journey, and hear all about the incredible work being done at the National Park Service. Plus, we'll discuss their ambitious 5-year strategic action plan, which is set to get started in 2025. Plus, all the latest updates on the Fort Pickens Ferry system, which is a great way to explore our stunning coastline. Then we'll shift gears and talk with Duel Christian, who's back in the studio to give us a sneak peek of his much anticipated upcoming cookbook. Whether you're a home chef or just a food lover, Duel's recipes promise to bring something fresh and historic to your table. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss this episode. Before we get into those interviews, let's check out what's coming up around the area on our go-to segment, Florida Focus. On this week's Florida Focus, we have your weekly guide to the hottest events and activities happening in the Sunshine State. Whether you're a science enthusiast, a foodie, or a history buff, we've got something for pretty much everyone. First up, let's journey back in time under the stars. The Emerald Coast Science Center is hosting Planetarium Night on Thursday, January 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. You'll learn how our ancestors navigated the world using the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets. This immersive experience takes place in their inflatable dome planetarium, where guests sit on cushions to enjoy the show. Space is limited, so grab your tickets early. Show begins at 6 p.m. and there's another show at 7. Each one lasting about 45 minutes. Visit ecscience.org/events to secure your spot. Calling all foodies and craft lovers, the Foodies Food and Cultural Festival is taking over Pensacola's Interstate Fairgrounds from January 24th to 26th. With over 40 food trucks and vendors serving gourmet dishes and sweet treats, and dozens of artisans showcasing handmade jewelry, arts, and crafts, it's the perfect weekend outing for the whole family. Plus, did I mention that admission is free? But don't forget to register online to help food trucks prepare. Head to the Pensacola Interstate Fairgrounds and don't miss the fun. For all the bookworms out there, the Grown Up Book Fair returns to Odd Colony in Pensacola on January 25th and 26th. Relive the nostalgia of childhood book fairs, but with an adult twist. Grab a beverage and browse through selections from local bookstores while snacking on nostalgic homemade treats. The event kicks off at 12 on Saturday and wraps up at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Don't miss this literary escape. Next is West Florida Genealogical Society presents How Pensacola Was Involved in the Underground Railroad. History comes alive with the West Florida Genealogical Society on Saturday, February 1st at 10:30 a.m. Join park rangers at the Pensacola Public Library for an eye-opening presentation on how Fort Pickens played a key role in the Underground Railroad, helping enslaved Americans gain their freedom. You can attend this event in person or via Zoom. For details, contact West Florida Public Libraries. And finally, prepare for some kooky, spooky fun with the Addams Family Musical in Destin, Fort Walton Beach on February 1st, 2025. This delightful musical comedy brings everyone's favorite creepy characters to life. It's a must-see event for fans of the iconic Addams Family. Catch the show at the Maddie Kelly Art Center located in Niceville. Stick around because when we come back, we'll sit down with Rick Clark, the new superintendent for Gulf Islands National Seashore. Get to talk to him and know him a little bit better, plus hear his exciting plans for the parks and what's next for Fort Pickens Ferry System. Don't go anywhere. Locally Florida will be right back. Hey there, and thank you for sticking around for more Locally Florida. I have our next guest in the studio. Today we're talking with Rick A. Clark, who is the Superintendent of National Park Service, Gulf Islands National Seashore. Welcome to Locally Florida, Rick.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, and I was doing a little research before the show, and I learned that you have been with the National Park Service for quite some time, but this superintendent position, it's pretty new, isn't it?
It is. I've been the superintendent at Gulf Islands National Seashore for 6 months. I came in June of 2024. I've been with the National Park Service. It will be 40 years.
That's
as
awesome.
of March of 2025. Truly blessed to have my avocation be my vocation and be with the agency that long.
Yes, and you have a beautiful area that you are working in, so I'm sure you have a lot of good stories. And I want to take it back a little bit. So before those 40 years, did you have something that maybe happened that inspired you to be involved with the national parks?
Well, early on, coming out of school, graduate school, it was like, geez, what am I going to do? I need to apply it. I really had some interest, and I happened to take a backpacking trip out to Yellowstone National Park, and went into the Lamar River Valley, the Hoodoo Basin of Yellowstone National Park, and was switchbacking up with my backpack. And about halfway up that day, I'd been in the backcountry maybe about 3 days.
Oh, wow, that's a while.
Yeah, that's way. Coming down the trail was probably one of the most well-poised rangers that I've seen to this day. He was on horseback with a pack horse behind him. He pulled up. He said, "How are you doing? Is everything going okay? You have your rain gear? Do you have your provisions? And hey, by the way, there's been some grizzly bear activity up the trail. You're prepared to hang your food and what?" And I said, "Oh, yes, sir, absolutely. Just great to be in the park." And so he exchanged those pleasantries. He proceeded down the trail, and I proceeded up, and I looked back and went, I want to be like him.
Whatever job he has, I want that.
I've never looked back.
Oh, that's a good story. And it's nice to know that there's people out there who are helping campers and hikers and whatnot, that those people exist. So
Absolutely.
You're doing a great job, and it sounds like that he inspired you at a young age.
Absolutely, and couldn't do it alone without the dedicated staff, men and women of Gulf Islands National Seashore, all incredibly dedicated, committed to the mission, and collectively, hopefully, will preserve the park in perpetuity for many generations to come.
So that's one of your missions, right? And do you have any other core programs that you want to touch on?
Well, the National Park Service Organic Act tiers to all national parks throughout the entire country. So whether it be Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee, or Yosemite, or the Grand Canyon, the core mission is to preserve and protect those outstandingly remarkable resources for the future enjoyment of generations to come. So that's true for all national parks, including Gulf Islands National Seashore.
Well, thanks for explaining that a little bit. Now, I've heard that y'all have some new, a plan coming out this year, a comprehensive 5-year plan, and that's something that you, from what I hear, will be completed pretty soon. And then can you share some of the goals and key priorities of that plan and tell us a little bit more about what we can expect?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a strategic action plan, a comprehensive plan. For the first time in this park's history, we're looking at being holistic to make sure that we have an identified, mutually agreeable plan across all disciplines that really identifies the overall vision, mission, goals, objectives, and priorities of the park as tiered to the park's enabling legislation and primary purpose. So we are in the process of establishing a contract for that now.
Okay.
And hopefully that contract will be awarded, and we'll get into coordinating that project sometime later this year, with the goal by the end of the year to have a bona fide strategic action plan that will guide the direction and priorities of the park for the next 5 years, again, across all operational disciplines. So we're really excited about that.
Well, that is exciting. So something for the locals to look forward to. Another thing for the locals to look forward to, I also heard about a ferry system coming to Fort Pickens. Can you tell me a little bit about just how that's currently operating and the plans moving forward? Because I know many are excited about that.
Yeah, the long story short is actually the park has been operating a ferry system for the better part of the last 4 years. About the time it truly got operational for the first time, COVID hit.
Oh.
So that had some influence and it affected operations to some extent. But beginning last year and especially in 2024, the ferry system operates on a regular reoccurring basis with emphasis in the summer. So people who want to have the combined experience of getting on a boat and then going out to Fort Pickens or the Pensacola Beach area have that opportunity. Sometimes see dolphins along the way and get out to the park, where the park does also provide tours and opportunities to learn more about the history of the Fort Pickens area. So we have a concessionaire that operates those boats, which are owned by the National Park Service, that run on a regular reoccurring basis, and that schedule and the programs that are offered as part of that ferry system are on our website, www.nps.gov/GUIS will take you to that site and everything that the park has to offer at any given time.
Well, that is something truly incredible for the visitors and locals alike.
Yeah.
Get out there on the water and you can go and see some dolphins, take advantage of all that the National Park Service is doing in our Gulf Coast area. So say that website one more time in case someone wants to go out.
Sure, www.nps.gov/GUIS.
Okay, thank you so much.
Everything and more that you want to learn about Gulf Islands.
Yes, there's
National
plenty to
Seashore.
learn, and I've learned a lot from you today here,
Wonderful.
Rick. So
Absolutely.
thank you for joining us on this episode of Locally Florida. Stay tuned because we have a little bit more coming up in just a bit. Thanks for tuning in to Locally Florida. And welcome back. Our guest today, Duel Christian. I know last time you came on the show and we were talking about your food tour, Seville Savories. And today you're back again, but to talk about something a little different.
Yeah, I will be having a cookbook published in the spring, sometime around April, May, or June, coming out through the History Press. And it's called Flavors of Pensacola, a culinary history book with recipes.
Ooh. So Flavors of Pensacola, that I imagine has been a long time in the making since you've been doing the food tour for so long down here.
It's been an idea of mine, and I finally sat down and made myself write it out, but there's going to be over 100 recipes, and I go back through the entire history of Pensacola. So I go all the way back to what the Native Americans were cooking and eating 2,000 years ago in this area.
2,000 years of recipes?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and then Spanish recipes and French and British Creole, all the way up to the year 2000. I've got recipes in there from some restaurants here in Pensacola right now.
Well, what inspired you to go back that far and to write a cookbook about all of the food traditions of Pensacola?
It hasn't been done.
Okay.
There have been some regional cookbooks, but nothing this extensive going back that far or this far forward.
Yeah.
So this is a unique, one-of-a-kind thing.
Well, I mean, you've been doing research, I'm sure, about all the different history or the history.
So I contacted I know some historians and archaeologists out at University of West Florida, and they put me in contact with other people and told me, read this book, especially this chapter for the Spanish foodways, this doctoral dissertation, this thesis. So I spent a lot of time in the UWF John Pace Library.
Oh, that's a fun place.
And I found old cookbooks dating back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, and pulled recipes directly from those that are sitting in the archive right now. So,
well, have you been surprised by anything?
To an extent, yes. The Spanish were doing some very interesting things. Their Spanish cooking is always very delicious. And what they were able to bring in here. And then the British cooking, depending upon what was local and what they imported. Another reason why this book is important is because cooking here was not the same as cooking up in the early colonies in New England.
So, I imagine we've got a lot of...
So some recipes would be same, but using different ingredients depending upon what was available.
Yeah. So incorporating the seafood, the Creole, the Spanish, different ingredients and stuff. Well, that is so neat and rad. Now, I see you brought something for us today.
I did. So this is a recipe from the British occupation here from starting in 1765. This is what you call catsup, or ketchup now, but it's catsup. Was originally not made from tomatoes. Matter of fact, Europeans took hundreds of years to start eating tomatoes because they thought it was the devil's fruit.
What?
So originally, this is a British recipe, and it was made out of mushrooms.
Mushrooms. And that's the beginning of our ketchup.
Yes, exactly.
Can I see it?
Yeah.
That is so...
There's a little sediment on the bottom.
Interesting.
But you salt 2 pounds of mushrooms, and you let it sit overnight, and that drains the liquid out, and then you squeeze it through cheesecloth. And the liquid that comes out of there, you put into a pan, and you heat it up with vinegar and water and some herbs, and it comes out like it's a liquid. But funnily enough, it doesn't really taste like mushrooms.
Does it taste like ketchup?
No, not at all. It's actually very close to a soy sauce.
Okay. Yeah, it looks more like that.
It tastes like a vinegary, salty soy sauce with just a hint of mushroom in it.
Well,
it's very good. I make it all the time now.
If you wouldn't have told me it was the ketchup of back in the day, I would have never guessed. It does look like a soy sauce.
It's very easy to do. It just takes, you just let it sit overnight in the fridge, and then just a couple minutes on the stove, and then you've got it.
And that's in the cookbook?
It is in the cookbook,
okay.
Yep.
So this cookbook's coming out, hopefully going to be released in spring of 2025?
Yes.
And where can people go online to get all the details about it?
So the publisher is handling almost all the marketing.
Okay.
You will be able to purchase it directly from me on my website. I will have a website store, but it'll be available on Amazon and in Books A Million and Bodacious Bookstore downtown. It'll be available locally at a lot of places. So.
Well, tell me about the format of the cookbook. Is it just recipes? Are you including any photos?
Oh no, there's yeah. I took all the photos, all the food photos. I made a ton of recipes, and they're going to be in there, and a lot of historical photos that I obtained from the John Pace Library. UWF. So there's historical photos, there's food photos in there, and there's descriptions on a lot of the recipes and a basic history of each era of each one, because it's the British, the French, all the way through. So
it goes through based on the timeline, and you kind of work your way through.
And then 20th century, though, I broke up into 2 separate chapters because technology advanced so much. In the early 20th century, we were still cooking on wood-fed cast iron stoves, and now we're cooking with infrared light rays. So,
no way.
So I had to break it up to 1900 to 1950, and then 1960 to 2000.
Well, with over 100 recipes, I'm sure it's really difficult, but do you have a favorite?
I've always been partial to Creole food.
Okay.
That's my favorite cuisine, and so, you know, I'm always just look, you can bribe me with gumbo.
I'm right there with you.
I'll do almost anything for a good bowl of gumbo.
Anything with seafood in it, which is why I love the Gulf Coast. Well, be on the lookout for the Flavors of Pensacola cookbook that Duel Christian is going to be publishing later this year. And you know, keep your taste buds ready, because it's going to be a good little book of recipes, over 100 recipes. So thank you for coming on and talking to us about it today, and stay tuned for more Locally Florida.
I got troubles on my mind. I got a river a mile wide. You call me up on the telephone, but you only call 'cause you're all alone. Yeah, I got a few troubles of my own. You say I have you. Hold on to Change gonna come either way. You can make me, you can stay. Change gonna come either way. You can make me, you can say. Change gonna come either way. You say I have to, and is that what you make? Do I have to, or do you Thanks, y'all. I tell you what, we